2, 1. Full course yellow is deployed. Full course yellow is deployed.
Yes, and if I manage to turn this graphics off, we will be able to say hello to you once again. There we go. We hide that. Welcome to another edition of Full Course Yellow in Pit Lane's weekly motorsport get together, live Facebook and YouTube chat every Thursday night. The new time of Thursday night at 8:30 here on the YouTube channel and also the In Pit Lane Facebook page. And getting ready for a big weekend of motorsport, of course, nationally and internationally. We got the Grand Prix is back again. We got Baku coming up. We got World Endurance Championship and some big news there that was announced only a couple of hours ago. We'll have more on that in just a moment. But they're at Fuji running this weekend. We've got racing out at Calder Park, and the Sandown 500 is here again as well. Apparently so. Apparently, the man who's saying really, and who was as bewildered at the lack of promotion as any of us is Richard Outram, and he joins us along with Peter Johnson, Mark Jones, and that's it tonight, and Murky. So that's your group. How are we all?
Great.
Yep, good.
So
on the bounce.
So it probably doesn't affect you, Mark, as much, because I imagine there's even less publicity about the Sandown 500 happening in Queensland than there is in Melbourne, because there's absolutely bugger all that I've seen down here. Pete and Richard, what have you seen? Have you seen anything?
Yeah, I heard that was. Oh, so go on, Pete.
Sorry, only on various radio stations, but yeah, nothing on TV or anything or in the papers.
Well, it was funny because like today they sent out, after the event, Supercars sent out a media release with a photo like taken at Sandown of all the drivers, on the grid at standing on the grid at Sandown, and saying, the drivers all got together at the Sandown 500 launch and media day. Well, they've told us about the media day probably 2 hours after it's actually happened, and there was no sort of mention of the fact that the media day is happening, and no sort of really crazy ideas like, hey, if you come down here, you might be able to actually talk to some of our V8 supercar stars. Judging by the still photos I've seen from there, I couldn't see any television camera crews running around. The drivers seemed to be very relaxed, sitting out in the sun and on the fence and chatting amongst themselves. But I didn't see any bloody media there, so I don't know if anything at all appeared on our news services tonight, because I only got home. But
not the one I watched.
No, so that was it. And also, there's absolutely no free-to-air coverage for the first time in a long time. There is zero free, not even highlights on free-to-air apparently this weekend. So I'm not sure what the 7 deal was, because it was always that there were going to be highlights. It was going to be, the events that weren't covered were at least going to get highlights later that night. But that seems to have vanished completely now. And I think that like 7 probably would like to, would be happy to run it, seeing there's, as far as I know,
there's no football.
Yeah, there's no football on Sunday, as far as I know. So if that's the case,
no, there won't be until grand finals come around. Now the AFL's largely allergic to playing on Sundays. I mean, even last weekend when we had 4 finals to get through, they preferred to do a Thursday night final to a Sunday final.
Yeah, well, they don't want to have the situation that they had in the past, which was, like there were complaints by people sort of saying that, well, it's not fair. We played on Sunday and the other team, so we only had 5 days break or 4 days break or something. So they've pretty much killed off the whole idea of playing finals football on Sunday, which is great for a great place for the Sandown.
Great for the rugby league.
Well, good for the rugby. Well, especially this weekend in Melbourne, because if you want to see some footy down here in Melbourne, the only place you can see it is at Amy Park when the Melbourne Storm are playing somebody or other. So
I didn't look at the Green Guide thoroughly today, but last Sunday in the TV guide in the Age on Sunday, there was a lot of TBAs on 7 Mate in the time slot where the race would be run.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And also TBAs late at night on Channel 7.
Which that's interesting, because that sounds to me like there may have been some negotiations going on behind the scenes to actually get it up and running and have it there. And they, because I've got no doubt 7 obviously want it, because I mean they've got Bathurst just around the corner, and you would think that for no other reason they'd want to at least cover the main race and sort of say, as a promo for Bathurst. But
exactly, yeah. Well, mind you, I've seen plenty of advertising for the Sandown 500 on
it's
YouTube.
all happening in Queensland.
Well, no, on YouTube and Facebook. I've seen the ads online, not on television or in print or anything. So they're pursuing a different media strategy where maybe they're just concentrating their media spend online.
I mean that's nice. They seem to be very half-hearted about the whole sort of retro thing. Has only really happened in the last week, and that was pretty much at the insistence of some of the teams. So we are going to see some retro thing, and some of them look good. I mean, some of the Castrol, Tom Randall's car in that Tom's Toyota looks way better than it normally does. That's a really that old sort of Tom's Toyota Super GT World.
I look at it and I think Neil Bates.
Yeah, that's the other one. At Rally Championship as well. It really did. It really does stand out. Great for television. We saw today, also at Sandown today, the Penrite guys, Grove Racing, were out there. They're running a blue livery this weekend as a part of a tribute to Alan Moffat. It's not the same. They have the blue Brute 33 XC Falcon or XB Falcon out there.
It's not the right hue.
Yeah, it's not the right colour. It's not the same. It was like, we're paying tribute to the famous Brute 33 Falcon, and it's a totally different colour altogether. But it's blue. It's close enough. Yeah.
The car doesn't. Forgive me if I have my history wrong, but I believe the car doesn't exist anymore. Like the B-52 car was the car that was consumed by flames on the way to between Melbourne and Adelaide one year.
Yeah, I know. The one that's out there that they're going on show, they did point out that it was a replica. So, and it's been out there a few times. But the original was a beauty, because if you remember, that was the Super Falcon. That was the one that was basically built and tested in America. And you can go online on YouTube. You can have a look and you can see how Alan in America testing the Falcon out there. It had lots of input from Lee Dykstra and all the guys at Carcraft, who of course were responsible for the Trans Am Mustang. So he had lots of sort of input over there, and this was going to be the car that was going to totally revolutionise motorsport in Australia, and was going to just romp away with both Sandown and Bathurst. But it wasn't all that successful, really, compared with some of his other cars.
If memory serves, I think the very kind people at Holden Dealer Team protested the car during the week at Bathurst 74, and
I think they did.
Yeah, and that saw the car being torn down and rebuilt, in the hours before the race, kind of. So that put the team behind the 8-ball a little bit, and the car subsequently had mechanical problems.
It was a beautiful car to look at. It was a lovely looking car. G'day, Box. How are you? So saying, just check the TV guide. The gap's on. There we are. So Sunday afternoon is AFLW. So the women's competition is going to get the run on Sunday afternoon, and of course Saturday afternoon on the main station is horse racing, which it often is, because they've got a couple of horse racing deals. So I don't think they were ever particularly interested in covering the Saturday, but I'm sure that if they'd have had the opportunity, they would have stuck the 500 on somewhere. But I think
the Saturday the V8, the supercars are hardly out. They're out for one qualifying session, and then the top 10 shootout at 5:30 in the afternoon.
It's a terrible. Well, that's the crazy thing. 5:30 in the afternoon. For a start, I mean, they've obviously got special dispensation to break the curfew, because as far as I know, the curfew is at 5:30.
Yeah.
And it's also, I mean, they're talking about the forecast for Saturday is 13 degrees and rain.
Yeah.
It'll be bloody dark as there'll be no one there at that time. It'll be bloody freezing and pissing down with rain. It'll be as miserable as.
Yeah.
Oh, apparently it is going. Yeah, well, there we go. Monday morning, midnight to 2 a.m. on 7. So there you go. If you don't have access to KO or Foxtel, just stay up all night on.
There she is. There she
and
goes.
and there it is. So just basically, you might you might miss the start. If you watch the Grand Prix, you'll probably miss the start of the fight. But then as soon as the Grand Prix finishes, you can flick across to Channel 7 and see Midnight to Dawn Motorsport on Channel 7. I actually don't mind that as an idea. I'd love if I'd have known earlier. It would have been good to go to 7 and say, hey, why don't we play this? Why don't we do a Midnight to Dawn? We'll come in and host. I'm sure we could get the studio open at RMIT. We'll do an in-pit lane, Sandown 500, Midnight to Dawn special. We'll get some bands in and we'll make a party of it.
Oh, such a pity our Hal Todd isn't alive today.
Hal Todd lives on forever. Hal Todd and Deadly Ernest.
And actually, the good thing about Baku is it's comparatively earlier than other Grands Prix. It's actually an earlier start than most of the other ones. Yeah.
Well, it's a little bit closer to Australia, so the time zones are less friendly. It's as far east as possible without being Asian leg.
Part of Asia,
Speaking of which, makes perfect, excellent time slot for watching the 6 hours of Fuji.
Yeah, unfortunately or fortunately, one way, depending on which way you look at it, I won't be home. I'll be out at Calder Park doing commentary for drag racing and roll racing on Sunday. But certainly, depending on what time it finishes, I might be able to throw across on the device and listen to the last half hour or so of it on my drive home from Calder on Radio Le Mans because. It's going to be, and Toyota have been hit by BOP yet again.
Oh, in the run-up to their home round.
Round of their home track. So that's upsetting people. But one thing that isn't upsetting
they had a second-place finish last time out at a track that wasn't supposed to favour them. So I'm thinking that may have had something to do with it.
Yes, I think so. And the other big bit of news, as I came in and sort of sat down to get ready for tonight's chat, the first thing that popped up on my news feed was the official announcement that, and we've known that it was coming. It was just a matter of when, and it seems to be a strange time to announce it. I think, but yes,
I wouldn't have thought so. I mean, it coincides with the World Endurance Championship's visit to the region, to the Korean region.
I suppose so, but I would have thought they might have done it at the like they do at Le Mans, like do it on the Friday or something like that when all of the media are there. But it seems to be a very low key because they haven't exactly said when they're going to do, but they
haven't started yet. So
Hyundai have said that they are going to commit to racing an LMDH program, and they're going to run it under the Genesis banner, which is their their equivalent of Infinity or Lexus or that sort. So that's what they're going. So it's going to run not as a Hyundai, but the good news is, Richard.
Lincoln.
So
yes.
you and I, in 2027, you and I can say that we might be able to say that we're driving a Le Mans winning mark.
Yes, absolutely, yes. Perhaps we can buy one.
Yes. But yeah, that will be that's happening. So that's terrific. That's terrific news. As I said, we've known it's been coming for a long time. Everybody's been tipping it. Everybody, sort of knew, and it was expected that it would be announced at Le Mans. And when it wasn't, people went, "Oh, that's a bit strange." But perhaps it's
I
not
guess they hadn't
happening.
committed to it yet.
Yeah, quite clearly. Well, apparently, like all of the major sort of, a lot of the major bosses from Hyundai from the road car division were at Le Mans, basically being wined and dined and 69 and whatever at the track. I mean, it is France after all. So so they were all there. So and obviously they were impressed with whatever they got, whatever whatever was
I'd be
made
impressed.
made them make them happy. They were obviously very happy. So they've now announced that yes, we're coming on board. So boy, that's going to be the question: is where the hell are you going to put them?
Well, and that is going to be their partner. I think that's the biggest question: which racing team are they going to align with, or are they going to do the Toyota thing? Back when Toyota started the Formula One team, and so well, okay, we'll just take the rally program and put another building alongside it.
That was the rumor. The rumor was that it would be based out of Germany, out of the rally headquarters over there. But whether that happens or not, I mean, because as I said, at the moment we're fairly light on details, but we do know that it's going to happen now. They have committed to it, and there's also very strong rumours that in the next few weeks we'll get an announcement from another manufacturer about a new GT3 program aimed at trying to get into the and that's the problem. The GT3s, Mercedes want to be in the World Endurance Championship, can't get in. Audi sort of, obviously don't care at the moment. They're going Formula One.
They
racing.
don't have a car.
Perhaps. They don't have a car, but there's certainly apparently rumours going around that there's going to be another manufacturer coming on board in GT3. So GT3 is really just exploding as well. So sports car racing around the world is just going crazy at the moment.
Are they going to have enough garages for all these cars?
Well, that's one of the limitations. They're actually building new garages at Imola in order to cater for the increased numbers, so they can get the full quota in. But that's the limitation.
Well, I suppose they could have. I suppose the ultimatum may have passed to Imola saying, "Look, if we don't have some more garages, then we'll have to take the race to Monza or Mugello."
Yeah, so I think that was it. So
well, Monza, I guess. Mugello's too remote, but yeah.
There's also, I mean, we know that the British fans would desperately love to see Silverstone back, but apparently there's been a major falling out between Silverstone management and the WEC. So
really,
they've said that they're Silverstone have said, "Oh no, we'd love to have them back," but WEC and the ACO have said, "No, not happening. No space for you. Sorry, no room at the inn. Not happening."
That's disappointing.
It is very, very disappointing because they always got good crowds there, and especially now. I mean, it's just they've had good crowds everywhere. In terms of Sandown, David's saying I was going to go on Saturday, but now going to stay home. I'm in the same boat. I mean, I wouldn't spend that money having a look at what's on there. It's a really disappointing. So basically you've got supercars, you've got Super 2, which are old supercars, and Super 3, the couple of Super 3 cars, which are even older supercars. You've got the Carrera Cup, good racing, but basically a one-make series. Toyota 86s, one-make series.
Great racing.
Great racing, but, for me, it's...
Kids. I love to see the youngsters going at it. I mean, okay, I am unapologetically a great fan of Toyota 86.
Yeah, I'm just because the thing is, my passion for motorsport comes from the technical side of it, and I love the great racing, and it was. I mean, the scholarship race they had there a couple of weeks ago in the State Series was an absolute ripper, and I mean it's hugely successful. They had a full field for the scholarship race and great racing, and now they've got a full field for the main races as well, including a couple of the scholarship guys. And we had Caliban Bros on the program a couple of weeks ago on In Pit Lane, and he's certainly looking to get into that main game. And our mate Clay Richards is there as well. Lots of really good talent going through there at the moment. It seems to be very, very successful. And as Carrera Cup always puts on great racing, and I think they're far more entertaining than the supercars, to be honest with you. But really, I mean, like I'd for that, I'd want to see like a bit more sort of variety out there. And there's not a lot, as Pete said, there's not a lot happening on the Saturday. You used to get sort of the co-drivers race. Well, apparently, that's not happening this year.
Well, no, that was abandoned a few years ago, wasn't it?
It didn't.
I mean, we haven't had it
last
for a while.
year. It didn't happen last year either.
And that was fun because that's where you got to see a lot of the talent. Now the thing is, and it's down the bottom in our that's down the bottom in our. Thanks, Rod. Appreciate it. It's in the ticker that like there's also the new rule which is going to apply for Bathurst as well. That Garth Tander is unhappy about, and I would join him in this. That the rule is going to be that the main game and the primary drivers all have to start the race. So that takes out yet another
variable.
Sort of bit of variable, and another bit of strategy that you could use where you say, okay, we've got a really, really good, a really experienced driver like a Garth Tander, like a Craig Lowndes, someone who can start the car. And he's going to Jamie Whincup, someone who can start the car. And then you've got that mix of, the secondary drivers and the prime drivers. And then later on, that goes through, you see, drivers with different standards of experience and, drivers from the past taking on the young guys of today. And it just makes it a little bit more sort of, a little bit more variety, but it's going to be, they're taking that away now. So you've got, compulsory number of pit stops, compulsory number of tyres, compulsory fuel drops, compulsory, when the drivers start or don't start and all the rest of it. That really takes a lot of the excitement of an endurance race away, because strategy is a really important part of it, and they're taking it away. They're just turning it into sort of, like basically a 3-leg, very long sprint race.
Well, they've been watching the NASCARs.
They can have.
They have a 600-kilometre sprint race, but
they said about having stages. They don't need them because they've set it up as a.
That's what they are talking about, having stages, because.
There's no point if they're not allowed to mix the driver pairings up.
The driver pairings, that's there. So that's really disappointing. Got there. David is saying, like, one of the bits of news that came out this week as well came out just before we went to air on In Pit Lane on Tuesday night, and there's some follow up to that as well that was released today. We said a few weeks ago when I went out to the GT festival at Phillip Island, it felt and smelt and looked and everything like a dress rehearsal, and nobody denied that at the time. Well, it was officially a dress rehearsal. They clearly liked what they saw, and it's been announced now that the SRO will effectively take over from the Speed Series and run their own series of races next year. Now, as David is saying, is this the last year of TCR? I don't think so. I think TCR might be safe. That's going to be the question. There's a couple of hidden in the press release that came out. There was a hidden headline, which I'll get to in a second. But when the reason that meeting at Phillip Island worked, as I said at the time, was there was room to breathe. There weren't too many categories, and all of the cars and they were all new cars. They were all. There was no old stuff. It was all sort of GT3, GT4, production cars, which were mostly cars you can still buy off the showroom floor today. So they were pretty modern. There were a few slightly older cars in there, but basically they're sort of all modern cars.
Oh yeah, there's 4 different varieties of BMW turbos plus Mustangs plus
the Camaro,
and then
which
you've got
did
your old
surprisingly well. Yeah, so you've got all those sorts of cars, and that was reflected in the car park. I mean, as I said, we walked around the car park. It was a very upmarket crowd. It was a much younger crowd than we normally see at supercar races or at club or at state race series or anything like that. Like I said, the average age of that crowd was probably in sort of the mid to late 30s. So it was, and a really diverse crowd as well in terms of, ages and ethnicity and, and gender and everything. It was a real family atmosphere. It was a great meeting. And as I said, they were probably one category short. Now, I think TCR, because it's, once again, they're modern cars. There's factory involvement, at least through Honda and Hyundai. I think the TCR would be a pretty good fit for that category. So
yeah, I'm not convinced that SRO would want to cede any form of headline potential to another category. Like anything else in Australia, other than supercars, obviously, is not competing with SRO's GTs for headline, but TCR would.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. I mean, because you would think that they've got but see the hidden headline in that, and also I'll just go into what was announced this afternoon, is that Adrian Coppin, who recently left Motorsport Australia and has been involved with running the Australian Rally Championship with Motorsport Australia, has now been signed on in his company. And I don't know if it's an old company or a new company or whatever, but the company he's now with will take over the running and the promotion of the Australian Rally Championship next year. And that's really interesting. So you've got sort of Motorsport Australia basically, moving out of the promotional thing, because I think they were very reluctantly moved into it to keep those series alive. And now they've got some options. They've got SRO to run what's effectively the Speed Series. They've got this new group with Adrian to run the Australian Rally Championship. But what they said in the press release, and if you have a look at the statement from Sunil Vora from Motorsport Australia, did mention an increased involvement and some exciting news coming about state level racing. And it wouldn't surprise me if some of those sort of national series that had been running in the Speed Series that might not get a run in the SRO series might be popping up on a more regular basis at various state rounds, which I don't think is a bad thing, because it certainly worked at the last meeting at Sandown with sports sedans and the Toyotas. It gave them a lot more.
Formula Ford do that regularly too.
As well.
What about S5000? Where are they going to
go? Dead.
Well,
dead. I would think so.
They were already dead. So unfortunately,
I think it was Ben Bargwana posted some stuff, because the new Peugeot has been testing, the new TCR Peugeot, which has been developed for world use by Gary Rogers Motorsport and has done some testing at Sandown recently. Ben sort of put in a thing like a look behind the scenes of them building and finishing off that car, and then in the background sort of said, and there's sort of, there's all the chassis for all the S5000 cars, which hopefully we'll see race again one day. But they were all in bits all over the place. They didn't look like they were racing anytime soon, that's for sure. So,
and anything under sort of a V8 in Australia has had a checkered history, like Super Tourers that died a death. And
by the same token, Super Touring was an international category, and it died. It was dying internationally, so there was nothing really. Like they were 2-litre naturally aspirated cars producing 300 horse in the 1990s to 2000s. I mean, the TCRs are producing.
Machines.
Oh, they were fantastic race cars. They were, but yeah, but they were producing the same sort of horsepower as TCRs do now, and TCRs are turbocharged. So Super Tourers were very highly strung by the end of it.
Yes. Yeah. And they look at too, when you have a look at some of those. See that, I remember that Nissan that Gary Rogers was running, that Steve Richards was running for a while. If you have a look at that. Yeah, the Primera. My God, what a magnificent piece of engineering that. It just it's Formula One standard. It's just gorgeous, but it was just way too expensive around the world for what it was, and it never sort of got the never sort of kicked on and got the popularity. And with turbocharging now, it's like you can. Those cars they're running very, very low boost. They're pretty much under stressed. They're running 300, and I think they're getting up to 350, 380. They could dial them up and get the sort of figures that they get out of WRC cars and more. They could get up to 500 horsepower, but they don't, because they don't need to. They're front wheel drive. 300 is plenty.
So, big Ford Sierras used to fry tires with the horsepower they had. You put you tip over 400 into a front wheel drive car. They'll start to need pit stops.
Yeah, so it's I would hope to see TCR, but once again, it's sort of stalled just everywhere. It's if you have a look, like I think we talked about it a few weeks ago, that the Japanese manufacturers, apart from Honda, simply haven't embraced it in the way that everyone hoped they would. You've still got, basically you've got Volkswagen through Cooper, you've got through Seat,
and Cooper and Audi and
Audi. So
at one point there were 4 different Volkswagen brands in TCR. I mean, at the time that was in part because Seat was changing over to Cupra, but you still had Volkswagen Golfs and Audi RS3s as well, and they're all being built in the same factory. It was just different sheet metal coming off the coming out of the cars, and and that actually took a bit of a blow when the Volkswagen decided to pull out of TCR, which is something that they later rescinded because there was still a demand for Audi TCR cars, and also the Cupra wanted to continue with it. So
the whole idea was really because they basically said, let's take the GT3 model and we'll and move it over to sort of under 2 litre touring cars, and we'll have this, people will buy them around. The difference is the market hasn't been there for them to buy, because you can see the appeal of buying a Ferrari, even though like the cost is a lot more. You can see the appeal of, for businessmen or people who've got that sort of money to spend, of buying a Ferrari or an Audi R8 or an AMG Mercedes or even a Ford Mustang, etc., etc. It's a lot more. It's way more appealing to say than saying, oh yes, I just bought a new i30N to go racing. It's it's not.
Well, it's a different model. I mean, the TCR is looking after the hot hatch crowd. It's there's. I mean, it started really quite strongly. We had Opel through General Motors, of course. We had a car, and we had Subaru was involved as well. But
Ford had a Fiesta.
Yeah.
I think.
And then we see that half of the manufacturers that came in when it started, there was a Fiat as well, if memory serves. There was at least one Italian car, I'm thinking of the Alfa Romeo. The Alfa Romeo had a Fiat engine, and that's why that's backwards in my head. But but a lot of the manufacturers who came on at the beginning didn't develop a second car. Once their first car aged out, And I mean, Nissan was always going to be a hard get once Peugeot committed. No, sorry, not Peugeot. Renault committed to run the cars, so that meant Nissan wasn't.
Yeah, so they've gone. I mean, the only reason we got Peugeot.
The Renault's actually ran. The Renault Megane actually ran a Nissan engine as well. So that was, and you saw that Volvo was committed to running to Super 2000 still, because that was the World Touring Car Championship category, and they didn't flick over to TCR until quite a bit later. So and like Volvo's continuing on under the Lynk & Co brand. Yeah. Like the Lynk & Co is basically a Volvo underneath, but yeah, I
think I think when it was taking off too, I remember being at the Grand Prix and thinking, wow, this is good. But then the pandemic, which we dare not speak its name, happened, and I think that affected things as well.
And that really hit S5000 as well. I mean, there was sort of and that it changed a lot of plans for an awful lot of people, and it really hit at the wrong time. So whether TCR can turn around, the World Tour sort of falling over, at least in Australia, certainly hasn't helped at this level, but they are claiming that they will be back next year, probably not at Bathurst, probably just at Sydney Motorsport Park, but they do say they're committed to running an Australian round next year before the round at Macau. So yeah, let's have a look at it. But I'm thinking that I'm hoping to get someone from SRO. Mac McMillan who's in charge of it all. He's not keen. I've spoken to him online in the past. He's not a big fan of jumping in front of a camera. He's not a sort of big media performer, but I'd really love to get him on in the next couple of weeks on In Pit Lane and sit down and see what to see what their plans are for the series. We've got a couple of people from Motorsport Australia coming in as well. There's some big changes happening at Motorsport Australia, and we've got a couple of the people involved on that. In fact, on September 24th, Lisa Crampton is coming in, who has a very extensive international resume and is now sort of involved and has just started work sort of in the last few months for Motorsport Australia. So she's coming in to have a chat with us, and there's some stuff which I don't think has been announced yet, but it's some interesting new appointments. One in particular, which has a real effect, which could have a real effect on that whole state racing thing. It seems to be a commitment by Motorsport Australia to, let's have a serious look at grassroots racing and get things in place there, and perhaps solve some of the problems, which we sort of pointed out on our show on Tuesday night. If you haven't seen it yet, on the In Pit Lane YouTube channel, we did a story from August Access down at Phillip Island, where we spoke to people from the production sports cars and also supercars, as well as Pyark. And they were all sort of saying that, really, we've got, we're running at these sorts of meetings, these, really sort of tiny meetings where there's no spectators allowed. It's very, very low key, but we're running here because pretty much we've got nowhere else to run, where we can sort of do the sorts of races that our competitors want to do. And that's the thing. And I mean, Richard, you've had the same thing, because, the Hyundais the Excels have run at the Access meetings as well for similar reasons, because there's just not the time to get the number of laps that you guys want as well.
Well, of course, we have both Trophy and Masters, and that's been a sticking point with the state series, because the young guys tend to be very gung-ho and say, oh, look, I smashed my car, Daddy, can you fix it? and somebody like me goes, yeah, but what about my car? And also they were getting too.
Yeah, they were getting. Well, that's it. That's been a real problem at the state level for a while now. It was a huge problem in Formula Ford. I don't think we got a full Formula Ford race at Sandown for a couple of years, because every time they went out, it'd last 2 or 3 laps, and then it'd be red flagged because there's so few runoff areas at Sandown. Just basically anything that crashed at Sandown was almost immediately a red flag. So, and the schedule was so tight, they couldn't say, okay, we're going to red flag this and then we're going to restart the race. It was like, we don't have time to restart the race. That's it. You've done it. You're finished. You've had your 2 laps. You've red flagged it. Somebody stuffed it up. Next. And that left a lot of people really, really annoyed.
Well, now everyone, of course, gets the same amount of time, or approximately the same amount of time. 20 minutes.
Which they should have done years ago. The New South Wales have been doing it for years. I don't know. What's the situation in Queensland, Mark? Is it timed races? Or
no, because we've got 2 completely different series of because AASA, or rather the option, is much more established up here. So they've got their own, like they do timed races to some. Oh no, sometimes they do, sometimes they do. It comes okay. The AASA type of event, like the events that are run by, I shouldn't say AASA, it's Queensland Raceways runs their own events, and they run to the format that the category wants to run.
Right.
Category gets to choose. If they want to do timed races, then that's how they do it. If they want to do 4 races instead of 3, then like 4 races is commonplace for Queensland 2-day meetings nowadays. But sometimes categories will want to run longer races, and or what some categories will do is they'll concentrate all of their racing on one day. Like they'll qualify and do all their races on just the Saturday, and then their program fills up on the Sunday in a different manner. But it's not a hard and fast format. So, but then there's also the Motorsport Australia Queensland Championships, which is a bit more regular in that regard. It's the roughly the same amount of time, same amount of. They're not timed races, but I believe how it works is they guesstimate. They work out the number of laps based on lap times that the competitors that the category normally runs at.
The advantage of doing of timed races, I think, because the problem is they were doing. Well, there's also. We've also got the situation that you have, like with the state series, they would have, a couple of 6-lap races, and then they'd have a main race of 8 or 10 laps, depending on the circuit. Now, the problem is with that is, an 8-lap race, and when we were televising it, when we were sort of, doing the recording of it, it was a huge problem for us because if we were doing like a 10-lap Formula V race, it'd go longer than the allotted time we had for the show, and that's okay because we could cut bits out of it and we could shorten it up. The sports sedans, their 10-lap race would only go sort of, like 18 minutes, and we had a lot of padding to do. Whereas now everybody gets their 20 minutes, and the sports sedans get their 20 minutes, so they get the same amount of time. They might only go, 8 laps. The Formula Vs might go 10 laps or something, but it's still 20 minutes. Everybody gets 20 minutes. You can plan for it. I'm sure that one of the reasons they've done it is because of Blendline TV. I imagine that Blendline might well have said to them, we would really like it. It would really help our running sheet if we had allocated times that we would be able to say, this is 20 minutes, that's 20 minutes. Much easier to edit, much easier. Makes life a lot easier to run timed races than it is to run lap races, especially if something goes wrong. But anyway, Rod's saying TCM is getting bigger. It's starting to come back. It's starting to come back. I think it went into a bit of a dive. The thing I miss about with TCM is, for a while you had cars like the Escorts and the Porsches and some of those smaller cars of the past, Alfa Romeos and the like, and you just don't see them anymore. I mean, it's all just,
Oh, that's a while ago now. That's
yeah,
pre-COVID, basically.
yes, oh
That's,
yes, it's all
yeah,
just V8, V8, V8 now.
Yeah, and
Which,
the Pacer famously was rebuilt as a V8.
yeah,
But and touring car masters did have a few different cars, of course. Like they've introduced the Commodores and the XD Falcons, and they also had that beautiful little Monza, Chevy Monza. That was,
yeah,
but we don't
that was
see
nice.
the yeah, and there was the South African Capris and.
Yeah, so
there
they're
was,
always very popular. The only thing I say is like
yeah.
this was the thing that like with the GT festival is that once again, I mean, for people of my generation and Richard and our generation in particular, we love it because obviously it's a nostalgia boost to say, oh yeah, I love Capris, I love Mustangs, I love the Falcon, the Coupe and all the rest of it, all those cars we grew up with. The younger audience, which the sport desperately needs, and I know because we take them out to the track. We take crew members of In Pit Lane go out to the track, and I've had them sort of turn to me and look and go, "What the hell are these old things? They race that? They just don't." They want to see modern cars, and I don't blame them. I want to see modern cars as well. Leave historics for historics, I think.
I personally would have thought that Group S would have been a better fit for an SRO event than Touring Car Masters.
Yeah, that's what I think about. That's what I've said about Bathurst 12, the Bathurst 12 Hour. Turned it into a sports car. Turned into a sports car festival. Just have it, GT3, GT4, Group S, prototypes and/or radicals. Yeah, Prod Sport. Just keep it as sports cars, and it's a different audience. You're going to get a different audience, a different mindset because it's a bit like when you're scheduling a rock festival. It's like saying having a heavy metal festival and then saying and thanks Iron Maiden for coming on the and now here's an ABBA tribute band. And it's like, what?
Oh, and on that and combined touring cars, we saw the announcement during the week that the combined touring cars are adding, for want of a better term, historic GT3 to their grids for next year. So that fits then as well. And and sports sedans, of course, aren't that the sports sedans are probably closer to classic GT, European style GT racing from the 70s and 80s than just about anything else. And we even saw it on in 1984 at the World Endurance Championship round at Sandown.
Yeah.
There were sports sedans in the entry for the big race, like Tomo's Mercedes Benz was in the big event.
Yeah, and the Monza.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Bob's Monza was there with Dick Johnson actually behind the wheel of a Chevy Monza.
And Alan Grice,
Alan Grice.
Johnson and Grice, yeah.
And
I suppose Grice he had driven the car a couple. Yeah, and John Bow was involved with them at I believe at the time as well, and Tom had been helping out a young fella called Jones.
Yeah, that's it. So you've
Bradley, I think.
Yeah, so you've also had the announcement this week that, and I think this is it also goes back to that story we did on Tuesday night about places to race and times to race. And the Bend have announced they're going to run one-day Friday meetings, and I think you've said up there that they've been running sort of midweek meetings up at QR for a while that have been quite successful, didn't you, Mark?
Well, it's as much as it's a lakeside thing too, kind of a little bit. But these gear days, they're called Golden Era. I forget what the AR is, although undoubtedly will be racing. Golden Era Auto Racing. I don't know. Anyway,
That the
but
cars
yeah,
or the
they're.
drivers?
Yeah, well,
But it's also, I mean, but it's also not really racing as such. They're not, they're basically sessions as much as anything else. So you come out and it's. And because they just run it as sessions, that reduces the cost. Like they don't have to.
well, that's how they've
They
been
don't have
running the
any of the.
historic. Yeah, that's
Well,
how they've
yeah.
been
Well, they
running the
don't.
historic sports sedans. They've been because they're not an official sort of, there's a lot of the cars are sort of, because there's replicas and all the rest of it. They can't get sort of, like full fields for race, so they don't run them as races. They run them as basically sprints. And by doing it that way, they keep the price down, the prices down, but they also have a lot more flexibility in what they can or can't allow in. So they can take a look at, so they can look at something like Peter Fowler's reconstruction of the Volkswagen, and
Well, the
incidentally we had
57
some
Chevy.
great shots of that. The 57 Chevy, yeah. I mean, I'd have liked to have. Unfortunately, I wasn't up at Winton. Would have liked to have done a story on that because that looked fantastic. That car, would have loved to have done a story on that, but unfortunately, once again, the budget only runs to Winton once a year, and we spent that on the May meeting, so that was it. But next year, who knows? Festival of Speed next year, and unfortunately, the sports sedans aren't at the Baskerville Historics this year. They were last year. They put on a great show last year, but I think the Group C and Group A cars are coming back for this year, and also I think there's a big Group S race down at Baskerville, which we haven't had in the past as well. So yes, I think there's Group S down there.
Well, Baskervilles is running this weekend. It's HQ Nationals down there this weekend.
Yeah.
I forget what else is on, but yeah, there's something else on at that meeting as well. I would have to look that up.
Yeah, so but yeah, they do a great job down there, and I'm really pleased to say that we are going to be down there again. Jason and I, it's become sort of the busman's holiday for me and young Jason, because it's like we went down for the 1 year, and then they said, "Oh, will you come back next year?" And it's like, yeah, and then they said, "Will you come back again this year?" Well, yeah, of course, because it's a great meeting. As I said, if you've got any opportunity at all to go down, I mean, especially if you can get a chance to, get a car down there and drive. I mean, please take the opportunity of doing it, because it's one hell of a track, and it's just a great fun meeting, and just everything about it is just really, really top weekend of motorsport. And it's the unofficial, Melbourne Cup long weekend, because let's face it, nobody at least in Victoria, goes to work on the Monday. The city's deserted. It's like the final scene from
on the beach.
On the beach, you go into Melbourne on Monday on the Monday of Cup Day, and it's like did the bomb drop? Where is everybody?
Pandemic's hit again.
There's Colin Hay standing on a street corner going, "Streets are empty, there's nobody about."
So, but anyway, that's it. Now, of course, we got to say Adrian Newey, £30 million. I think I worked out today that he's earning something like $1,800 a minute.
Yeah, that's what I'm worth.
That's sort of a top level soccer money, really, isn't it? European soccer money.
It's a ridiculous amount of money. It's actually quite obscene when you think about it. The fact that he's earning more in an hour than most people will earn in a whole year. And I mean, I get it that he's a genius and all the rest of it. And it's going to make a lot of money and a lot of success for Aston Martin, probably. At least they're going to be hoping. They made a huge investment in him. So,
well, there's an ownership level as well, isn't there?
They've made him a part owner. Yes.
Oh, on top of the salary. Wow.
Yes. On top of the salary, yeah. Or maybe it's not so much a salary as an ownership dividend.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably like Tim Cook at Apple. I mean, he gets, they say, oh, you get paid so many billions a year, and he says, no, I don't. I only get paid, 1.7 million or something. Oh, and stock options, which are worth several $billion.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, and clearly they've got him on board now. He's got to he's going to be on gardening leave until sometime next
January
year.
1?
But
mid-year.
no, actually, I think it's what Pete. What date? I think it's March, isn't it? Or
Yeah. I think it's about March. Yep.
but clearly, I mean, they've got him there for the new regulations. Because let's face it, if there's somebody who can find a loophole in a regulation somewhere, in new regulations, we've got a whole new book, a whole new Bible to read and to interpret. And Adrian Newey is very, very good at that. So if he can find the loophole, if there's a loophole there, he's going to find it and he's going to exploit it. And
what was Colin Chapman's famous line? Rules are for the adherence to by idiots and the interpretation by wise men.
Yeah, so I think that's it. And he pushed it. He pushed it to the extreme, and probably killed and injured a lot of drivers because of it. But nonetheless, he also produced some very beautiful race cars over the years. Some of the best looking Formula One cars in the history of the sport. But
some rather nice road cars too.
yeah, some nice road cars, and some really good cars over the years. But he was a very smart man. But his idea was that saving weight was everything, and if you put in a bit of bracing there to protect the driver, it's going to add that much weight.
No.
Yeah, forget about that.
Yes.
You want to be safe in the race car, don't crash it, all right?
Yeah, well, there you go.
Yes. Well, don't get involved in someone else's crash.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, everyone. I think that's. I think we've pretty much killed off the hour. Thanks to everybody for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it. We will be back next Thursday night at the same time, 8:30. That's our new time for Full Course Yellow. Every week. We've also remembered this coming up this week on In Pit Lane. We talked sports sedans before. We're going to talk under 2 litre sports sedans next week. I mean, they're sort of the forgotten sort of secondary class of sports sedans. Used to be great. They used to be all in together, and you'd have Gary Rogers and Phil Ward in their escorts, and those little cars. Brian Sampson in his Toyota Celica, nipping at the heels of the big cars. But then things sort of changed, and the smaller sports sedans got sort of pushed back and back, and so now they're running in their own series as part of the AASA Victorian Motor Racing Championships, which are going to come up at Calder in a couple of weeks' time, along with the stock cars, the hyper races, and a few other categories out there. So yeah, so they're going to be racing this. Don't forget of course, we can't forget the XLs. So,
here's a question that I'm not completely across. Would minis fit in with U2 sports sedans, or the
yes, there are a couple. There's quite a few. Yeah. There's quite a few minis running around. Some of those mini challenge cars. They changed the sort of regulations because a lot of them are supercharged, but they changed the regulations and they've got restrictors and they've worked on them. So there's quite a few. There's quite a few of those cars running around in the category, and but we'll have a couple of the drivers, a couple of female drivers coming in for a chat on Tuesday night. We've also got our musical guest on Tuesday night. As people who know the history of In Pit Lane's music will know that it all started when I found a busker and went, "You're very good. Come with me." Well, we're doing that again this week. I was in Melbourne the other week, found a guy called Miguel Alvarez. He was singing, and I just thought, my God, this guy's so good. And I said, do you want to come on a television show? And he went, yeah, all right. So he's going to be on Tuesday night. You remember the last time we did that last year, Isham is just huge now. I mean, not just in Australia, but all around the world. He's incredibly talented. And this guy, I think you'll find similar as well. He's got a fabulous voice. and you'll see him on the show on Tuesday night as well. Plus, we'll probably have some news and a few other things as well. But anyway, we'll see you. We'll see you then. So it's Tuesday night at 9:00. Live on the In Pit Lane YouTube channel, and then of course In Pit Lane on Full Course Yellow Thursday nights at 8:30, where we just sit around and have a chat like we have just done just now. So thank you to us. So thank you to everybody. Clyde, how are you? Thanks to you, and also thanks Rod. And thanks to Box again. Thanks to David as well. Thanks you to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next week on Full Course Yellow. Until then, thanks for joining us and bye for now, everyone.
Go, Matt Campbell. Go, Yasser Shaheen.